Well, welcome to the Young Lawyer Podcast. I guess just a brief introduction of your journey so far in the legal profession.
Journey, yes, a long one. Happy to be here, Damon. Appreciate the invitation. I started practice back in 1988 when I started my articles at another firm in Mooloolaba, Munro Thompson, and did 5-year articles, which have long since gone by the wayside. But and so worked with that firm for 8 odd years while doing my articles and getting my degree from QUT. Buggered off overseas for a short while, came back and then set up a firm with a good friend. And so that was Kimball Wood, and that sort of has had a few partners here and there, but I've been with the firm the whole time, and we're 2004 rebranded to Sajen, which is what we've been ever since.
Right, that's pretty interesting one so far. I guess for the listeners, were you straight into law out of high school, or was there a gap? Were you interested in it at all?
It's a funny story. It never crossed my mind to be a lawyer while I was at school. My grandmother always said I'd argue the point with St. Peter at the pearly gates, but it wasn't something that interested me. I was always going to be in the Navy and wanted to fly, be a pilot in the Navy. And I come from a service background, and I went to the Defence Force Academy in Canberra in the Navy, but turned out I wasn't particularly good at being told what to do. So I left the academy after 6 months, and law was pretty much the only other education I could get where I get paid along the way. And coming from a family with not an awful lot of loot to spare, that really seemed to be the option. And even then, it wasn't something I thought, oh yeah, this would be really good. I just figured I really didn't have much of a choice. Turns out, I must have some sort of aptitude for it, because I'm still doing it after 32 odd years. But
must enjoy it.
There are bits and pieces, yeah. She's a harsh mistress, the law, but it can be very rewarding, and for most of us that stick with it, it gives quite a good standard of living compared to a lot of other careers. And you get if you embrace the collegiality of the profession, it can be very good as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's the biggest thing I've realized is, how many people are wanting to, chat, want to help, want to mentor. Whereas, when you're a student, you're really hesitant to ask, directors or anything for help, because you think they're, flat out all the time. They've got no time for you, all that sort of thing. And it's just, really kind of opened my eyes to that.
Yeah, I guess one of the most rewarding parts of where I'm at in the profession now is really being able to share what I've learned with the less experienced lawyers. Often that's from my own cock-ups along the way, and lessons imposed on me by opposing lawyers or judges, or a combination of both. But it's funny because as a litigator, it's quite an adversarial job, and you're constantly beating up on each other. But the reality is, if you're a thorough professional, you learn very quickly to put your personal issues aside and remember that it's not your fight. Your job is to advocate for your client's best interest, but that doesn't mean you take a personal interest in it. And if you can do that, having a collegiate relationship with your colleagues and even your opposing lawyers is not difficult at all. Some of my best friends are lawyers with whom my firm is in direct competition with. But if life's too hard to spend time battling people in your personal life as well as in your business life, as well as for your clients. So yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. It's very easy to get dragged into that personal side of it. For some reason, it just seems to be a bit too easy to take pot shots at people left, right, and centre nowadays. And just I think you've got to be mindful of that.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. With that being said, how do you separate the personal from work?
Well, here I am at home doing something for work. It's not easy, and look, realistically, I probably don't do it very well at all. I know a number of my team do it very well in varying degrees, but it's a profession. It's not a job, and the idea that you can just come home and switch off, I think. And for me, and this isn't for everyone, but my view is that I just can't switch off. I worry a lot about the clients and the firm and things like that, and I just find it very difficult to separate the two. And so there's and my wife works in the practice with me and as the sort of chief of staff, and so you can't go home and just not talk about it.
Yeah.
There are certain times where we won't, but in the main, it's blended and it's part of life altogether, and it's not neatly compartmentalized as people might like to have it.
Yeah, as you said, some people can just switch off, but especially I think I've noticed in a lot of lawyers they can't, because as you said, you're thinking about the clients. People who've got businesses, they're thinking about that. With that being said, how did you decide to step out and open your own firm? Like, what sort of mindset was going into that?
Well, as I said before, at the start, I wasn't very good at being told what to do, so it was kind of a natural progression. I mean, the firm I did my articles with was very good to me. And while I probably didn't appreciate it at the time, I learned an awful lot there. And I'm not talking about the law in itself. It just how to deal with people and how to deal with yourself and the issues that come up in the profession and all of those sorts of things. But after 8 years there, or 7.5 odd years, sorry, that's the yeah. I'd sort of got to a point where I had to sort of have a break. So I went overseas, went climbing for a few months, and sort of to get away and get out of 8 years of work with not much play, and came back and thought it was a real opportunity to do something for myself, rather than go back to working for somebody and have a crack. And I was young and stupid and didn't know any better, and figured, how hard can it be? It's what you don't know that'll get you. And so at 27, and my partner was 29 at the time, Tom, he and he'd worked with me previously as well, and we figured we had some idea of how the world worked, and hung out our shingle. So we had a little. It was a former dress shop off the Esplanade in Mooloolaba, and we used the Mooloolaba Surf Club as our boardroom, which was pretty good. And we'd shut the door and turn the phones off at lunch and head over to the beach and sit in the sun, and didn't have any clients, didn't have any money, but it was pretty cruisy fun. It's good. Practice certainly hasn't got any easier since then, I can assure you.
Yeah, well, it definitely sounds like a pretty interesting start to it. How has it grown, and what sort of challenges you face, keeping it alive, or just in, I guess, legal profession as it is?
Yeah, it's the rate of change has been significant, just across the board. I mean, there's no the technology, the rate of change of the law nowadays, the expectations of clients and the marketplace generally about professionals, and the access to knowledge that your layperson has that they wouldn't have had previously. I mean, historically, lawyers had this magic bloody situation where they had all the knowledge, and the clients had the little choice but to trust the lawyers that they knew what they were talking about and were doing the right thing by them. And now the clients don't have to do that. They can check up things online, and while whether a little bit of knowledge is a good thing or not, it's not for me to judge. But it's been across the board. But growing, I mean, the firm started out, as I said, with nothing, but we always had a focus on what we wanted to do and the type of law, which was always business related. It was a type of client that we enjoyed working with, that we understood, and that we always thought would have a future and would be less amenable to the stroke of the legislative pen. I mean, I, as a young bloke, I used to do a bit of personal injuries work, and I was always worried about the fact that could change overnight because of the way insurance companies work, and the influence that they have on Parliament and our laws. Family law was never for me. Crim was fun. Did a fair bit of that when we first started, but it never really paid the bills. And business was, it was quite varied and gave you the access to a whole variety of different people. And so we just built on that and built our reputation. I focused largely on the insolvency and commercial litigation space. And over time, if you stick at it and you build a reputation and people support you and follow you, and the firm sort of grows from that. But we've been from as small as the two of us when we first started up to 45 people and then back, and we've changed in size and trying different things and mergers and demergers, and it has never stayed the same. Probably I have the attention span of a gnat, so anything that seems interesting I'll go following, and it hasn't always been necessarily successful. That's part of the trials and tribulations of business, but yeah, it's certainly been interesting.
Yeah, it definitely sounds it. So as you speak of the change and stuff, a lot of advertising, and especially law and all that, is moving to internet advertising, and you got your Sajen Legal badger, I think it is.
Oh, the honey badger.
The honey badger. How did you, I guess, come up with that idea to, put a character to the firm to give someone to, recognise, the firm kind of thing?
Oh, look, well, we've always had a strong philosophical adherence to brand and the theory behind it and how it helps business and things like that. And but the honey badger came out of, I wrote a comic book, I don't know, it would have to be 4 or 5 years ago now. I wrote the screen or the script for it, and I had an artist do all the drawing and colouring of it. There's a fellow called David Boller, a Swiss fellow who draws for Marvel, DC, so he's and a bunch of other comics, and as well as his own graphic novels. And so he did all the artwork for me, and we had that printed and published, and also an online version. And it was a bit of fun, something, some writing that I wasn't getting paid for, and was just pure creative sort of expression, and a bit of fun, but also we're always with a mind to the fact that the story served a bit of an allegory for what we do as lawyers, and protecting the oppressed and fighting the tax man and all the evildoers at in the government and that sort of thing. And so it was a bit of fun. And yeah, I guess the use of the honey badger as a bit of an icon as part of our overall firm manifesto and brand philosophy of not taking ourselves too seriously. What we do is serious and it helps people, and that's important, but that doesn't mean we have to take ourselves too seriously.
100%. I guess another question is, do you feel like, I guess, law firms as a whole are slowly moving away from the whole traditional approach and leaning towards more, I don't know how to put it, more casual, more almost poke fun kind of thing approach to having clients and make it a bit more approachable?
Certainly the younger generation is more amenable to it. Look, I think in the main it's cosmetic, because even while we might think that we like to not take ourselves too seriously and that we might like to poke fun the profession in some respects, or ourselves. Our clients are inherently conservative. When it doesn't matter what sort of issue they come to us with, clients are always worried and frightened. They've got a problem, whether it's, in some way, whatever we do, we're reminding of their cock-ups, and their needs have to be handled sensitively. And so even the most out there law firms, despite their appearances and the veneer, will still essentially operate the same way. And believe me, I've thought for many years about ways of trying to do things differently and how to do things differently. And even your grooviest media law or sports law firm or whatever is still ultimately going to do things the same way, because the service that's provided has to be provided in a certain fashion. Yeah. So absent and all the AI and machine learning and new law and all of those sort of things, they're only scratching the surface. And people say the profession is slow to change, and that's true. But ultimately, it's not because of lawyers. We serve a client base, and if they want change, they'll get it. It's not the other way around. Our market is no different to any other. And when our clients say, well, we want things done differently, well, then the lawyers will have to do them differently, or they will fail. But, at the moment, I think most of those sort of things, while good and show a willingness to change, really are cosmetic deep down.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, because, on one hand, you want to be approachable, but on the other hand, you don't want to be not taken seriously when, you're representing a client and all that.
No, and it's funny. I mean, one of a good example, I guess, is that, so we've always regularly staff will come and say, oh, we want a uniform. And my attitude is, well, if you need to be told what to wear, I don't really think I want to employ you. But equally so. And so I will get, on any day, there'll be someone in a three-piece suit and another person in a t-shirt and shorts in the office. And I don't care what they wear. But you be smart about it. A client, if you're seeing a new client particularly, don't wear a t-shirt and shorts, simply because they won't know that, they won't understand, and they'll have a certain expectation which you won't meet, and all of a sudden you're building a relationship with that person is going to be difficult. Once you know the client, they don't care whether you wear a t-shirt either. That doesn't worry them. Go to court, wear a suit and a tie. It's that simple. Do not, you don't, and it doesn't matter what you should be able to do. We can complain and rail about how things should be, but how they are is judges expect to see someone in a suit, so you wear one. And you'd be doing your client a disservice, no matter how personally you think it's silly.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. Still got to be some form of professionalism, especially when it's your first meeting, because that's, your client's worried about their business or their injury or whatever else they're facing at the moment. So they want to know that, the person doing the job is going to do it properly for them.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just about, we're an intellectual profession, so exercise your intellect. And I think historically it's been difficult for lawyers because they weren't allowed to advertise, they weren't allowed to brand, it was very closeted, and so they didn't have any opportunity to express themselves in ways that they might like. But yeah, at the end of the day, they're still professionals, and most of us are capable of working out those problems. Not everybody, but most of it.
On that topic, though, how do you feel the whole effects of COVID is going to transition, I guess, from office work to maybe at home for certain jobs, or allow certain people to work from home, say, stay-at-home mums, all that sort of stuff? Will it open up an opportunity for them to be able to, do their law degree and then still be like a conveyancer or, a lawyer from home kind of thing?
Yeah, look, I mean, a lot of that has already been happening in the legal space. I mean, one of our directors and head of commercial has worked remotely for 5 years, in Hong Kong for 3 years and in Sydney for 2. Okay, and that works fine. One of our other staff works remotely 3 days a week. From the lawyer's perspective, the technology's been around for quite some time to allow it to happen. I think the real bonus that's come out of, and I say many law firms have always have for many years accommodated flexibility in the workplace. They have to, or they just won't survive. Some are still a bit old school, but in the main, they're inherently flexible, and because technology allows that. But I think the real, I suppose, if it's a benefit that comes from the period in lockdown that everyone had to spend, is that now clients have been educated by force that it's possible to have meetings without face-to-face, that you can build a relationship with somebody in a digital world and still see the whites of their eyes, if you like, without you don't have to have that face-to-face meeting. And look, there is something still to being in somebody's presence, and that can be useful in certain circumstances, whether it is a new client. But my firm, much like many other firms, I think has lots of clients that never walk through their front door. That work is done and bills are paid, and you will talk to them on the phone, you will email them, text, whatever, and you may never see them. Now, would I say they are your A clients? Probably not, but they still form a fundamental part of your practice, and a lot of practices around. And I don't think we'll ever dispense with the need for face-to-face meetings. But if a judge is happy to see people via video conference, and that can work, and I've got colleagues who've been run 3-4 week trials during the COVID lockdowns, and while no, it wasn't as easy as being in court, where you've got everything at your fingertips, it just means you have to be a little bit more prepared, which is not something lawyers are renowned for.
It's saying that.
Half a minute seems to be a thing.
Do they do the jury by video link, or how does that all work? Is it just a judge over trial, or?
Yeah, they've in the main, from what I understand, dispensed with jury trials altogether. Or if if a jury is absolutely required, I think matters have been adjourned. Yeah, I don't. As I said, I don't practice in crime anymore, so I'm not completely on top of what's happening with juries. But everything I've seen, sort of anecdotally, is they're either adjourning them all or simply dispensing with the jury.
Oh, yep.
Because I think, at least from a state perspective, there's no constitutional or inalienable constitutional right to a trial by jury. I think federally we probably do, although it's been a while since I had to read the Constitution. But yeah, state-based. So any state-based criminal matters, it's well within Parliament's remit to dispense with a jury.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's also interesting, the whole fact you said, you may never meet clients. Where I'm from, they're small generalist firms kind of thing, very traditional approach. And to me, that's, something completely different. I wouldn't even have thought of, to be honest.
Yeah. And look, and it's a market too. It's your type of client. I shouldn't refer to them as a market, but your type of client, and the type of practice. If you have a small general practice that does your and the typical firm you would see in a country town, or or in a suburban corner, shopping mall, your wills and estates, your general conveyancing and commercial leasing and business transactions and things like that. A lot of, and they'll have a long-term client base, a lot of whom are elderly, or at least Generation X plus. They're more traditionally oriented, and a lot of them want to go and meet their lawyer and have a conversation, and a lot of lawyers struggle to articulate things when you're translating something in writing for your client, trying to explain a contract to a client, for example, in layman's terms, it's hard to do in an email or a letter. It's often actually quite much easier to be able to do in person, because you can see whether someone's understanding. You don't need to keep elaborating. Whereas once we start putting things in writing, we get carried away again and start delving into the detail, and it completely misses the point with the client. So there is a real need for that face-to-face contact, and more so than just over the phone. I think video conferencing is going to only ever increase, I think, in its utility for the profession. But yeah, I can see why those types of firms would have those more traditional approaches.
Yeah. And just one final thing to, I guess, wrap it up. Any advice for someone wanting to take up a legal career?
Traditionally, it's been don't.
I think I've heard that about 6 or 7 times now.
Look, I read somewhere that 80% of lawyers leave the profession before their 5th year post admission. And now I don't know how accurate that is, but anecdotally, from my own experience, that it'd have to be something close to that. You have to, if you're going to the law, don't get any idea that it's anything like law school. It's nothing like TV. You can help people an enormous amount of ways with the law. I remember the Chief Justice de Jersey, before he became the governor, at one of the admission ceremonies when I was moving a young lawyer's admission, said that there is more justice done in this state in the offices of solicitors on a daily basis than is ever carried out in the courts in a year. And he's right. The function of the legal profession, which largely goes unnoticed and should, make sure that society operates without chaos and violence and things like that. Now, in the main, it doesn't always work. But so even in a small practice where you might think that you're not changing the world, you are changing the world for your clients, and that's a really good thing. And if you can remember that's what it's about, I think you can have a really fulfilling career. It's not all bright lights and suits.
Yeah, 100%. And well, obviously, you're doing pretty well. You've kept the business alive. I even see you put out a book at some point.
Yes, I did publish a book, Ducking and Weaving. Yes. How long ago was that? That would have to be close to 10 years ago now. It's probably time I actually updated it, but I think I'd rather write. We've got another. I've got to write another episode of the Honey Badger comic, Honey Badger and Lily the Wonder Dog. But we've got a video, an animated version. And I've just got to finish the voiceover for the trailer. I've got a couple of actors I need to line up to help do the voiceover. And once that trailer's done, and if we can see if we can get some support for the animated version, maybe there'll be a whole series there. So I think I'd rather focus on that than writing another book about the law and business.
Well, that's definitely one way to brand yourself. That's for sure. All right.
Well, it's certainly fun anyway.
Well, that's the thing. Like, if you can't enjoy it, what's the point in doing it?
Oh, exactly.
All righty. Well, thanks very much for your time. It was great having a chat and having you on. Hope to keep in touch.
Not a problem, Damon. Thanks very much for the opportunity, mate. You look after yourself.
No worries. Bye.
See you, mate.